Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Joe Rodway and CJ. How are you
Yes.
both?
Oh,
Excellent, thank you. Thanks for having me
Yeah.
join your yarn today.
yes.
No worries.
Yes,
We're looking forward to it, Joe. So I'm just going to quickly hand it over to CJ. He's going to
Yes.
do his acknowledgement, and then we'll hear from you, Joe. Over to
Yes.
you, bud boy.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to bit of a different, kind of start to this today, I guess. I'm on Yudanji country, so that's where my mother comes from. So I must honour the ancestors from here, but also our elders today. But also, I need to shout out and pay my respects to where my father comes from, and that's up in the Torres Straits. His family is from the Badu Island or Budigal people. So I'd like to honour them and just, for what they've done for me to be here and for the rest of us to be here as well. So especially all those ancestors that, have showed us the way. But wherever, I always pay my respects as well to people that are listening in. So wherever you're from, certainly, I'd like to honour your people as well.
Well said, brother. Well said.
JB.
I too would like to just acknowledge all our elders, past, present, and any up and coming, and just pay the utmost respects to all our old people, our ancestors, for getting us where we are today. And I also want to pay tribute to my mob, the Muddy people down there in southwestern New South Wales. And also, as you did, CJ, just pay tribute to everyone that's checking in and saying g'day and wherever they might be. So thank you. Now I'm going to hand it over to Joe Rodway, and we just tried to work it out. We reckon it's about 4 years since Joe's been on. So I know a fair bit that's happened to Joe in that 4 years, but we're going to hear a little bit more. And I just, on behalf of Mibbenbar, I wanted to thank Joe and her crew that raised over $3,000 for Mibbenbar when they did an event in Adelaide. Is that right, Joe? But I'll let you talk about that because I don't want to take away from you. So over to you, Joe. But thank you from the bottom of our hearts because that money goes so far to helping. We're going to put it towards Mob at Wilcannia, and when we go down there and do some work with them. So thank you so much. So over to you, Joe.
Welcome. Thanks for having me join you, and I have to apologise for my boxer dog in the background. He's just living his best life, upside down on his back with all the legs spread. So
Beautiful.
he's enjoying himself. He's very comfortable. So I should pay my respects to, Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, the Yugambeh people on the Gold Coast. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. And yeah, so thank you for having me and allowing me to join your yarn today. And yeah, share a bit of my story and how my community raised some funds for Mibbenbar, which is kind of, I guess, why we're here chatting. I don't know, where do you want me to start?
I know a little bit about what's happened. So tell us, probably go back a year or so and tell us what happened there.
Right.
Yeah.
It is almost a year. 11 months ago, I had a life-changing experience, to say the least. All the animals want to get involved. So, yeah, I think that's probably the most important place to start because I'm definitely not the same person I was that chatted to you guys 4 years ago. Lots has shifted in my world. Yeah, I guess, excuse me a second. Hey, this is very important. Trying to get in on the action.
Yes.
So, yeah, I've not really shared this whole story from kind of start to finish. So how I navigate through it is kind of a bit new to me to articulate as well. So good opportunity for me to share it. It's actually not, it's a bit, almost 11 months ago, I set an intention for 2024. I think that's the best place to start. And my intention was to expand myself a little bit more spiritually and get to know a bit more about the connections, whether it's what your religion or what you call spirituality and what that meant for me. And so my intentions were that I was going to really learn a lot more and expand a lot more in this space. So the intention was very clear, and I set that. So that always happens early December when you're getting ready for the new year. And I had a very old and kind of getting quite tired puppy dog who I'd had for over 15 years. And I'd spent a lot of time in December and early January just spending time with him and getting ready to say goodbye. So it was a very emotional situation for me, kind of shifting into the new year and not setting any of my big running goals. I just held off and spent some time with him. So the 18th of January, we made the decision to let him rest. He was so tired, and we had the most beautiful celebration and experience with him here in our home, which was heartbreaking but lovely at the same time. So I'd had him through divorce, through failed IVF, through ups and downs of life. So I've had him by my side for 15 years. And his name was Vegas. So it's kind of quite interesting when it comes to the story of what unfolds. So his name was Vegas, and he was the love of my life. And we said goodbye to him on the 18th of January. And a weight lifted, because I had been waking up in the night thinking, is he still with us? Is he not? You put so much energy into taking care of them that I felt very relieved. A little bit guilty, but I did feel relief, and I knew that he was at peace. So I decided I had to train for an event coming up in February, but I hadn't been doing much because I didn't really want to leave him at all. And so I decided that, I'll get up and I'll do a trail run on the weekend. So on Saturday, I met a friend and we went down to the Northern Rivers Rail Trail. I ran 30K. My Vegas was running along the trails in spirit with me, and I knew he was there, and it was just really peaceful experience for me. And then that day kind of unfolded. You can pick it apart 1,000 ways, but a few little things happened and we chopped and changed. But unfortunately and fortunately at the same time, on our travels on the way home, I was driving down the highway, and a car decided to do an illegal U-turn in front of us, and we T-boned it, and I was traveling 110 kilometers an hour. And I had less than 2 seconds before impact as he turned straight in front of us. I believe he was just oblivious to that we were there, because we were hidden by another vehicle who was a bit further up. So in that moment, everything changed. We plowed into the car, and I don't remember really the impact itself, but remember waking up, opening my eyes and just saying, "Get out of the car," to my friend. And we got out of the car and I walked away like I am today. No scratches, no scrapes, no broken bones, absolutely nothing. I did total my Ford Ranger. It did its job and kept me alive and my friend. I'm grateful for that. He was, for me, anything material still has kind of spirit to it. So his name was Randall, and he kept us safe and did his job, and we're very thankful. So that whole experience set my trajectory and made sure that I was going to achieve my intentions for the year at expanding myself more spiritually, which has taken me on some profound journey since the 20th of January 2024. So yeah, that's where we're at now.
Well, and look, yes,
Wow.
you got out without any injuries or those sort of things, and your friend did as well. But I can only imagine how much mental anguish and that sort of stuff you would have went through now up even till today. I mean, you would still be going through that. And why I wanted to hear that story was because now I know the amazing stuff that you did after that in the like in the rest of 2024 with your runs and that. So tell us a little bit about some of the stuff that went through your mind, but also how you come back from that and was able to do the things that you did.
Yeah, it definitely T-boning someone at 110k an hour definitely has a way of rewiring you from the inside. Everything that you think and believe up until that moment shifts or becomes under scrutiny, I guess. And one of the first things that I was experiencing was definitely trauma, post-traumatic stress from the event. One of my childhood things that I remember being very scary was seeing accidents on the roads that just didn't sit well with me. I found them quite terrifying. So I guess my worst nightmare happened for me, and I had to come back from that. I had a couple of little experiences, because I'm very good at saying, yep, I'm fine. I'm capable of doing these amazing things. But one of my most incapable moments was when I had an appointment. This must have been within weeks after the accident. I was driving a car, which was terrifying in itself, getting back in the car. Anyone whose wheels were parked stationary on the side of the road that were on a certain angle, which is when I first saw the car, that would trigger some anxiety. When I was coming home from an appointment, I was only 5 minutes from home, but a car pulled out on my side and it into its lane, and I was in the other lane, and it just almost looked like a T happening again. The car was fine doing what it needed to do. And it set me off because a few little things had built up that kind of day. And it set me off into basically a nervous system meltdown. So I decided I could pull over and have a meltdown. But the only thing I knew how to do was to get back to safety. And safety was my home 5 minutes away. So I managed to hold it all together and get home and climb out of the car. And by the time I kind of came into the house, I was holding the walls. My legs were heavy, my arms were heavy, full of what felt like hot lava just weighing them down. And I was almost crawling into the bedroom, sat down on my bed because that's the only place I felt safe, and just was losing it. When your nervous system is overloaded, it starts shutting down, and your nervous system, and something which ironically is called your vagus nerve, it is when it's overstimulated, because it controls your breathing and your heart rate and your digestion, your breathing starts to go through the roof and your heart rate goes through the roof. But when it goes too high, everything will shut down, and it will essentially get you to pass out in a protective mode. So thankfully it didn't get that bad, but I was able to find a way and learn from what was happening with my body physically, because I've always been very much in control of how I operate, physically and mentally. And I was completely out of control and had no idea what was happening. So some of those, it happened a few times, and that was enough for me in the middle of the night to be Googling vagus nerve and nervous system overload and what you needed to do to really rebuild that and strengthen it so that I could find a way to balance my nervous system again and find some clarity in my thoughts and functions. Alongside that, I had a lady that's been massaging me for the last maybe 10 years is moving into a practice called somatic practice, and it's movement and breath work that helps move trauma out of your body, which ironically I needed. So she was very instrumental in the early stages of helping me unravel some of this trapped trauma that was in my body. And a lot of it was stuck in my pecs because I had gripped the steering wheel so hard and clenched and braced for the impact, that the impact itself, because this is what I do, I Googled what kind of force goes through a body at a certain speed and certain impact. And I had essentially received 15 ton of pressure on my body for something like 0.3 of a second or 3 milliseconds or something like that. So if you imagine one of those big cruise ship anchors, like a giant cruise ship anchor hanging out the back, pushing on my whole body for a second, part of a second, it's kind of gave me, put it into perspective what I'd been through and why I wasn't recovering as quick as I would expect after such an event. So yeah, the somatic practice and learning about the vagus nerve, I was put onto a book called The Vagus Nerve Reset. It's about a young girl who goes to a theme park and has an accident on a roller coaster and experiences trauma throughout her young years, and then goes on this journey of understanding what the vagus nerve is and how somatic practice can really strengthen the vagus nerve. So that was kind of the first physical learning that I went on. At the same time, trying to find some ways to meditate. I'd never actually really meditated or practiced a regular meditation. I mean, I go and run, that's my meditation, but I couldn't run. So everything I knew, the processing, humans like processing things in left and rights, and rhythm and movement. And so I was unable to do that. And so I ended up finding that a hot bath and a guided meditation kind of took me into this space that forced me into a very spiritual awakening, I guess is the only way I can describe it. I had kind of encounters with my grandfather and Vegas, my puppy dog, and they were very, very clear and like movies just playing out in front of me, like I'm watching a movie that I'm in, and there's no talking, but they're communicating, and so that brought me a lot of peace and gratitude, and they're both here with me today. They're like right beside me. I have my little dog's Ashes and a photo of my grandfather. And They were actually very present. It became quite clear early on that they were very present at the accident scene. So I obviously have them to thank for looking over me as well. So yeah, I would never have spoken about this kind of experience in the past, but it's so strong for me now, and it's part of who I am that I need to acknowledge that. So yeah, thanks for allowing me to.
I just think it's an amazing story, Joe, and I think it needs to be told. Like some of the comments that are coming up, like Stephen Simpson, g'day, brother. He said life has meaning, and we can see the meaning every day. We just need to look. Such a powerful story, Joe. And Derek Wilson, g'day, Derek. He said, g'day, brothers, Yama, everyone. Much respect to you on life's journeys. Life's journey isn't always easy, yet you have shown resilience. Your shared story, I will share with my friend who has had a similar journey. So, yeah, look, already, people understanding, and I just think it's an amazing story, Joe. So, and I think, your the stuff that you do is amazing. So, you've taught me a lot in my running journey. So, and this stuff here is just amazing what you're sharing with us all here now, and and I suppose to get to what you did after the accident, to be able to have the resilience, the strength, the power to be able to do what you did is just amazing. I just think it's just an amazing story.
Yeah, thank you. It was definitely a challenge, and I was sorry, CJ.
Okay, so did you want to say something?
So yeah, it was a journey to kind of to where I am today. I've done, despite that situation, I do have to acknowledge that I've done a lot, done more than I guess most people have an opportunity to do in their lifetime. So for that, I'm very grateful. But in saying that, I do make those things happen for me. I had the first half of the year planned already from the previous year with my business. I had a group of 16 ladies I took on a hike in April. Very difficult for me, but held it all together and made sure that they had the best experience they could, despite me not being at my best. And then I was really looking forward to getting back to Nepal. I took a group to the Everest Marathon in May. We hiked 12 days to base camp and then joined the Everest Marathon event from base camp, and then we run a village called Namche at the completion of the trek, waiting for some kind of like message to come through and some kind of healing. But for me, it's been a collection of so many little bits and pieces that is just building momentum as the years gone on. So I had 2 business opportunities that I had to get through because I'd made the commitment previously. And I still wasn't running at this stage. Yes, I did this big hike, but I still hadn't started running again, which is what I guess I've always said I'm not defined by running, but I've always run. And so when you can't run, then there's a part of you that's missing. I don't run obsessively. I don't run daily. I kind of have a nice balance of training and resting and doing things, but having a good rest in between and making sure I'm then ready and reset to do my next kind of challenge. So I started running again in July. 4 weeks later, I had an idea to see what this new mindset was capable of. So I signed up for a 6-day ultra running event in Adelaide, which is where you run around a 1.4 kilometre loop constantly through the night and for 6 whole days, and just go for as long as you can, start and stop when you want, but try and tick off as many kilometres as possible. And I approached it, I knew I wasn't trained for it. I wasn't ready, but I wanted to mentally understand what my new benchmark looked like. And so I ended up running, I had a goal of doing a marathon a day for 6 days. And in the end, I achieved 50 Ks a day for 6 days. And I ended up running 308 kilometers in that time frame. So that for me, I guess, was a bit of a celebration of that with little training, I can do big things. I managed my health and my body through that week because I did get 6 to 8 hours sleep every night. And I did feel slightly guilty because people were running around the park all night and clocking up, 5, 6, 7, and even 800 kilometers. But I was there for me, and I needed to do it my way and take care of myself. So that's where I guess the fundraising began for Mibimba, because it's become more apparent to me that I can't do these things just on my own. It's the connections with the people and the ladies through my business. So we've been going on hikes and doing these, little retreats that really, if I can inspire them just a little bit to do something slightly differently, that's fulfilling for me. So we started raising, I started raising money with the event I was doing there at Adelaide. And then on October 20th, so the event there in Adelaide was the first week of October. And then on the 20th of October, there was a group of us going back to Blackall, the Blackall 50K, which is on the Sunshine Coast. And a few of the ladies had done it last year, but they had a bit of a unfinished business. So they wanted to go back, and I hadn't entered as such because I didn't know what my situation would be. So I left it to the last minute and entered into the event, and decided that I'd just walk with the ladies and make sure that everyone got across the line. And we had a great day because we were all together and having good laughs and trail chats and singing and dancing. And I helped one of the ladies who'd never done it before get to the finish, and she showed a huge amount of resilience. But I was out there for twice as long as I usually would, which gave me a very, very huge appreciation for the people that are at the back of the pack. And by no means am I at the front, I'm kind of in the middle. But to be out there for 14 hours, we walked into the night. It was very challenging physically and mentally, but you cross the line and you look back and realize just how much you've achieved, and to see the ladies crying as they cross the finish line and thinking that they would never get there is really fulfilling. And that's what I hope to keep inspiring others as I move forward in life, to not do crazy unsafe things, but just really test their own limits as to what they perceive to be their baseline. And we all have so much more to give. And then a friend, to finish off October, a friend then said that she was heading to a trail run on the Great Ocean Road in the last weekend of October. So I jump at any opportunity to go explore somewhere new. And I'm from Victoria originally, so the area and country Victoria is definitely something that I find touches my soul. So I jumped in and we went down and stayed with her family at the dairy farm, and then explored the Great Ocean Road a bit. And I did a 50K trail run on the 26th of October, which meant I'd done about 415 kilometers in that month alone. And I've never done that ever in my entire running career. So that was October. And as a result, we raised funds across all those events, and just giving back to community and realizing how much we need our little tribes to get through and to give back with.
Now,
Amazing,
CJ, you want to go, CJ?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I'm just in awe. Joe, I really am. It's an amazing story. It's an amazing, it's amazing, but it's also, like you mentioned, it was life changing for you from the very start. Start of this year. But I just can't help but feel that your change, the change that's happened with you, is really, brought about by the love that you had for both, Vegas, and I guess was it your granddad or your father?
Yeah, my granddad.
It was kind of, granddad. Yeah, so it was kind of like, I'm probably thinking back 4 years ago when we talked to you, and you didn't have that much on your plate at that time, really. You were doing some runs and stuff with JB and also what's his name, buddy?
Mad scientist. Jack? Mad scientist.
Mad scientist. Yeah, that's right.
Scotty Page.
And then yes, Scotty Page, and now I recall, after you started talking about it, I'm thinking, oh yes, now I know who you are. I recall that conversation and some of the things you were talking about. But yeah, it's the things that you're talking about now, the last part of your story is really amazing, because this determination, this determination, commitment, and passion that you have for stuff is amazing, and and it's kind of weird, that things happen in your life, and you could change in a second.
Yeah.
You could change your whole outlook. Yeah, it's amazing. But yeah, no,
I think
I'm in awe of what
we
you've been
need to
talking about.
be, thank you. I think we need to be careful of the intentions that we set. And JD and Lisa are very clear with saying all the time, if you're going to ask for something, you have to be specific. So maybe specifically I'll ask not to have a car accident, but I could but in saying that, I know that I would have maybe scratched the surface or done 1% of the work that I've been forced into as a result of the accident. I would have probably tried to read a book or listen to a podcast, but strangely, I was already on the journey in December of last year. So I was listening, I found a podcast that I was really connecting with, and this synchronicity of what happened is quite amazing. When you look back, you can always connect the dots, which is one of my favorite quotes. But I was listening to some podcasts, and that stopped, and I was really enjoying my running. I was running 20K every second day, and I'd found this amazing loop. I'd run through the national park, along the creek. I'd get a coffee at 10K, walk over the road to the beach, finish my coffee, and then run the 10K home again. And I really had fallen in love with running, and that was one of my social posts. I did a little video on it, and it was just a very profound moment. And then to do some really big running events this year, but I just hadn't booked it in. I just hadn't signed up for them. I was just kind of in this, it didn't feel right to enter these events yet. And so that was December, put my puppy dog down, and then all the accident happened and everything unfolded. So I wasn't in a position physically to do these events. And went back to the podcast, and the same podcast introduced me to a doctor who'd had a car accident himself, and he explained his account of what happened when he went off the road into a ditch over this embankment and along the river for a while, and then woke up and just thought he was in heaven. And so that was the first connection that then I'm now realized that there's these little bridges in life, like this thing gets you to this thing, and then you're here for a while, and then you realize that bridge was always there ready for you to go over. And a friend I shared this podcast with a friend, and she's like, oh, isn't it this guy? And I'm like, oh no, it must be a different guy. And then she started listening to the one I'd shared, and she was like, oh my God, it's the same voice. It was mesmerizing. That is the guy I'd seen. So she shared her podcast, and that podcast has just been on like autoplay for the last kind of 6 months. And the things I've learned and the synchronicity that's coming out of it and the messages that I'm receiving from it have just helped me navigate through what I guess I thought at one point was like, well, I asked the question just before we hit the vehicle, is this how it ends? So that was the question that I'd asked. And thankfully the answer was no, it doesn't end like this. There's a lot more to be done. There's a lot more to life, and a lot more that I have to do. First learn and do, and keep learning and keep doing.
Beautiful. Now, Joe, I just want to take you back to Blackall. Now, that is a really tough race, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. it's 50K. You've got over 1,500 meters of elevation, which is quite a challenging 50K event with that much elevation gain. And it's hot. It's very hot. So sometimes, yeah. So sometimes oh, sorry, we have a bit of a delay.
Okay, go. You go.
So yeah, that's the event. It's called Blackall. They do a 100-kilometer event as well, which is tempting, but we'll see. The 50K is beautiful. The rainforest and the landscape, the change of the landscape that you go through in this event is really special. There's snow gums for miles, and it's just like all these people just watching all of us little crazies run through. So it's really special kind of environment that feels very connected spiritually. Rock formations that are just people watching over us as we climb up the bluff, which is one of the biggest and most challenging sections of the event. And it generally gets done in the heat of the day for a lot of the back of the pack runners. And yeah, creek crossings. And then for me, it was a new experience. And I guess I can take something new out of every experience because it was the third time I'd done the event. The first time I was planning on walking. We walked and ran the first half. Then I had to help one of our ladies who tapped out at halfway. She had a few health problems popping up, and so it was a great decision for her to just call it a day. And so I was like, great, I'm gonna run home from here. It's only 20K to go. I'm gonna get in by dark, and I feel great, and I'm really looking forward to running these trails. And so I ran off the 5K, and I caught up with one of the other ladies in a group, and it dawned on me very quickly that I can't leave her. I'm not going to leave anyone behind. I'm going to make sure everyone gets there. So she and I proceeded to walk for the next 15 kilometers, but she was struggling with the heat and obviously being out there for what was already probably about 8 hours, and then blisters. But she just kept on going, and we walked it in and chatted here and there and walked together, walked separately, but just, yeah, got to the end. And, yeah, 14 hours is a huge challenge when you're trying to fuel yourself for that long, you're been moving for that long. It's been super hot. I was running out of food because I was giving it away to people. I was giving water to people on the bluff as they were going up. So yeah, I like these events because they're challenging and we can kind of put ourselves out of our comfort zone. But I also always have at the back of my mind kind of I need to look after me first. And if anything goes wrong, I have to survive, essentially. Survive out there and make good decisions, and look after myself and everyone else that's out there with me.
Now, I just wanted to take you back to South Australia, Adelaide, when you did that. So you can imagine the difference of all the beautiful scenery, the different trees and rivers, little creeks that you run through. And then back to Adelaide, where it's a 1.4 kilometre loop that you have to run for 6 days. So tell us about everyone out there. Jo is just like, she's going to deny this, but she won't like it, but she's an absolute gun. And I just want to hear about that 1.4 loop just over and over again, compared to that beautiful scenery and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it was very different, that's for sure. And it was actually a beautiful park. So it was like there was a tower in the middle of it. There was fountains, a big water kind of system in the middle. The trail went around the edge of this park, and it was just 2 meters wide, and you had people walking on it all the time. Very well used kind of community park. So we were, as the event started on the Sunday, you can imagine all these families out having picnics and parties, and we were setting up tents in the kind of grassy area, and people had no idea what was going on. And so we camped there, sleep in a tent, a kind of private pod off a gazebo, a 3x3 gazebo. There's 3 pods off each side. So you walk in and go into your little pod, and you've got a stretcher bed. And so you basically have to bring all of your own, clothing and sleeping bag and mattress and stuff. But they do actually provide you with kind of 3 meals a day. So they've got people catering around the clock for the whole 6 days, which is why this event for me seemed quite safe for me to go to. And I also knew about 6 ladies from New Zealand that I'd met at a previous event. They were all heading there. So I kind of had people that I could call on and lean on if suddenly me testing my new baseline limits was just going to go pear-shaped. But the trail itself was beautiful. We did 12 hours one direction and 12 hours the other. We started at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning, and I smashed out 44K and had 8 hours sleep that night. So I was like, this is going to be a breeze. Everyone at 10 o'clock in the evening changed direction whilst I'm sleeping. I didn't know they've changed direction. And it was quite flat. There wasn't a huge amount of elevation, but there were 2 little hills, one on each corner of this big loop. It was nice to find a rhythm. I mean, I just try and find gratitude and comfort in uncomfortable situations. So I found a rhythm in the first afternoon, in the first day of kind of walking up the little rises and then running down them and running the flats and then walking up the other rise. And so it was quite meditative to do these little kind of loops, like rocking a baby to sleep, kind of up and down, and you were just ticking off. I would try and tick off about 7 to 10 loops at a time to do 10 or 15 kilometers, and then have something to eat and have a little rest, and then get up and do it again. So it's quite quickly you tick off, 10, 15, and then it's 25, and then it's all of a sudden you've done 40. So, and the atmosphere is amazing. The people that do trail runs and these kind of events are just real characters and just have such motivate themselves through their own experiences. I was actually asked as a conversation on a trail a couple of years ago, actually only last year, I was asked, why do you run? Trail runners run from trauma of some description, so you must have some. And I'm like, that's not why I run. But now I understand that you find that there is comfort in running and moving your body in the outdoors and connecting in nature and with other people, with a like-minded goal. So the community around that event, like you were strangers when you did the first few laps on the day, because people would pass you from behind if they were running and going faster than you, or they were off the track when you were still going. But then by the 6th day, everybody knew everybody. It was quite a small event. I think there was only about 40 runners in the 6 days.
Yeah, wow.
And we all knew each other. You're giving high fives, like we were commenting on what people were wearing and say, oh, I prefer what you're wearing yesterday. Like, I'm not vibing those socks today. And then there's some like fast socks, and it's like, oh, they're going to make you run really fast today. And I had an outfit for every day, and people would like say to me, oh, this is your best outfit yet. I like these colors. And so it was just anything to kind of forget about what we were all doing and just connect and keep moving. Everything was always so positive. And so it didn't make the trail, because there was still there was wildlife, there was ducks and birds, and there was a pelican. And I think it was on the 4th day that I said to someone I was walking with, oh, there's a waterfall there. When did that get there? I'd never seen it until now. So there was always something that you could kind of, I don't know, be reminded of or connect with. And so it wasn't, some people do 24-hour runs around a track, on a tartan track at an athletics field. That's not going to work for me. I don't think I would enjoy that, because there's not the trees to look at. You know, there's not the different flowers, the different birds, and the sunsets and sunrises through the trees. You know, so I guess some of the most beautiful times running were the afternoons and getting up early to watch the sun come up and keep pounding the pavement. But it sounds short. I enjoyed it. It's not for everyone, but I definitely didn't not enjoy the park. 1.5 Ks is, or 1.4 Ks is, it's quite a long way, but it's not too far that, like, if you had to walk 3K before you got back and feel like that would be too far. But 400 meters is like, oh, this is way too quick. Like, I don't want to do this. So it was just a really nice distance. You couldn't see the trail all the time. You couldn't really see who was where, and people would pop up. And it was just an interesting experience for me. And I wasn't in the kind of trained state to try and go through the night. I was very much aware of maintaining my my nervous system and not getting myself too run down. And I know very quickly lack of sleep will do that to me. So I wanted to maintain my experience and enjoy it. And I'm still surprised that I was definitely surprised that I could do 50K every day for 6 days. There are a couple of injuries that popped up, just fatigue wise, nothing too much. But as you can imagine, if you do the same thing, the repetition kicks in. So sore shins and sore foot, and I tore up my trail shoes on the concrete because it's concrete and they're meant for trails, but they were the only shoe that didn't give me pain in my foot. And I guess one thing, going back to the resilience, is that on the first day, probably because I got excited and I hadn't run a lot in the lead up to this, I had a sore shin. I went to sleep with a inflamed shin. So when you're running, you need to pick your foot up. And so the tendons up your shin can get really fatigued and inflamed. And if they decide to give up, you kind of have this drop foot, which you see in people trying to run across Australia and stuff. It's very common. So I went to sleep on the first night with that and kind of asked for it to go away, and so I could get through the week. And I had some ice on it and made sure I stayed off it for as long as possible, and got up the next day and decided to put my trail shoes on that had a little bit more structure and stability and more of a lot more solid between my foot and the pavement. And I didn't feel the pain until the last day. So wow. Someone was looking out for me then too. So I got through it and didn't do any running in November, and have started back today, training for my next event.
What is that next event?
I'm going back to New Zealand to do the Southern Lakes Ultra. It's a 6-day multi-stage. Jack's nodding like he's really keen for this one. We'll get you there.
I've got a fractured ankle at the moment, Joe, so not right now.
It's not. You're not going next year, are you? It's 2026, so that'll be good. But yeah, this event is a multi-stage trail run through the Southern Alps of New Zealand. So kind of out of Wanaka and around there and into Queenstown, and over Advanced Peak, which is one of the highest points there. And I was all set to do this event for the second time this year, but it was 4 weeks after the accident, so that didn't happen. But again, the trail running community and the people that I've met there are just like family. and they're the ladies that were in Adelaide. So I've spent some time with them in Adelaide. And I did actually get invited to still go back this year to the event, and I was part of the crew. So I took a lot of photos and helped behind the scenes. So it was amazing to see, first be an athlete in 2023, a supported athlete. And then in 2024, I was part of the crew. And in 2025, I'm going back to be an athlete again, but I am actually going unsupported this time. So that means I have to carry all of my own gear and food and bedding for the entire week. It has to be on me for the whole time that I'm through the mountains. A supported athlete just has to have their snacks and their water on them each day, and all of their clothing and bedding moves around with the event crew. And the event crew set up tents, etc., and put your bag in your tent. So when you run in and finish the stage, you've got everything there for you, and you can unpack and freshen up. But I am carrying absolutely everything on my back for the entire 6 days. So that is just adding a little bit more to it, but I'm looking forward to doing it in all three ways: an athlete supported, part of the crew, and going back and experiencing it unsupported.
Wow.
Just because I'm a sucker for doing things a little differently.
CJ? No. Now, I did want to just say too that we did a lot of training together, Joe, a couple of years ago. And I'll never forget what you actually did for me. I've told this. Tell the story a lot. But we went on a hike, and it was probably around about a 15K hike, and it was out, and it was to a place called the Pinnacles. And if anyone's ever been to this Pinnacles, it's just amazing country. It's just beautiful country, and there's rocks and there's everything there. And we got to this Pinnacles, and people are climbing up and going out, and I just said, "Nah, I'm not doing it. I am not doing it. Promise you, I'm not doing it." I said, "Tell Scotty Page," because he was one of the first out. I'm not. I won't be there. I'm not coming. I sat with Joe for probably about 5 minutes, and she actually comforted me and talked me into it, and then assisted me to get up this rock face, if you like. And like, it was pretty scary, like seriously scary for me. But I've got the utmost respect for Joe. I always had respect for her, but just what she did for me was just amazing, and I hold that in my heart forever. So thank you, Joe. I just wanted everyone to know that. So thank you.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yes.
Thank you.
I remember that, mate. You talking about that back in, 4 years ago, about that experience you had, man. It was, yeah. But I reckon you'll be right for New Zealand, Jack, JB. So
You know what? I think Joe's actually talked LB into it, because LB wants to do it. So I think she's actually talked her into it. So I guess I'm doing it too. I just got to get this ankle right at that. But I'll be back. Don't worry about that.
No worry about that. It's a beautiful place to be running and trekking, I suppose, around that,
Yeah.
around Wanaka and Arrowtown, and through to Queenstown, all that sort of stuff's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, there was one part of the trail through the Motatapu range that when you look back and connect the dots, I woke up that morning before we were going to head through this stage. So that was back in 23 when I was an athlete. And it was just eerie. The morning was eerie. And I took a video of the bay that we were staying at, and there was literally an angry face in the clouds. But I didn't see that until after. And I'm thinking, oh, it's beautiful. There's a boat on the lake, and it's still and calm, but it just was an eerie kind of calm. And we headed into the mountains, and we knew that there was a bit of a weather event coming through that afternoon, which no one thought too much about in the morning. But as we were moving up higher up into the mountains and away from the lake, there was these very sharp, jagged mountains on my left, on the other side of the valley, that I was very aware of, but I didn't want to look at because they looked very angry. And so I made a conscious decision I stopped taking photos as well. And usually I take photos everywhere all the time, but I didn't want to take photos of them. And so we moved through, that was kind of first 10K into what was about a 60K day. And I only did 45 that day because of what eventuated. So as we walked through these mountains, it was just really, you're so remote, and it just brings out the country with a lot more ferocity than when you're kind of in the concrete jungle, because there was nothing around, and there was parts where I was the only one I could see was me. I couldn't see another athlete on the trail. There was peaks and troughs that we were moving through to get up over these ranges, and I have a video just laughing at myself because I was the most remote I think I've ever felt in my life, in the middle of nowhere amongst these mountains that looked pretty scary. And not long after that, the weather rolled in, and unfortunately, well, for me, my survival instinct kicked in, and I knew I had to stay as dry as possible, as warm as possible. The wind was getting up. I was starting to not be able to move my hands because they were getting so cold. I'm like, okay, I probably need to get down this mountain as soon as possible because it's going to be so cold up here. And it's like you throw around these questions. Do you have to stop and put on all of your mandatory thermal gear? And I had a raincoat on, but I didn't have any wool and thermals on me. And then I kept running, and a minute later, I dropped down out of the cloud, and it wasn't raining anymore. So, I just kept going and kept pushing. And it was probably one of the most challenging times where it was dark, I was wet. I don't like not being able to see, which is, you've only got a torchlight to kind of guide your way through these trails, which aren't very well marked. And then finally finding camp. That's probably the most challenging situation I've been in the kind of the wild. But I always knew I was confident in my own abilities to get myself through it. But unfortunately, we did have a couple of people who were behind me that ended up getting evacuated because they got too cold and they stopped, and they were helicoptered out the next morning. So yeah, I guess the point to that story is I do put myself in these challenging positions, but I'm also very capable of my abilities to be able to make good decisions. And my dad always said it's not good luck, it's good management. So I think I've taken that into a lot of what I've done and what I'll continue to do moving forward. Yeah, so not to scare JB and Lisa, but it's the most amazing experience that changed my life, that particular event, in a lot of ways as well. I started my business rebranded after that, and I took a lot from that particular experience.
Give your business a quick plug too, so we can put it up there. And
oh, thanks. My business is called Eternal Peak. It's just life. We can't see the next peak until we've walked the valley and climbed the mountain and done all the hard work and get to the top and celebrate. It's amazing, but that's when you see the next peak and the next peak and the next peak. So I try to inspire people through kind of wellness and setting limits beyond what they think is capable. And we do a lot of kind of social hikes, just get people outdoors and moving. the amount of healing that happens through that I'm now more consciously aware of as a result of this year is something that I want to keep building. So monthly hikes and some retreats, and then taking people on a few little bigger adventures. We're heading back to Nepal for the Everest Marathon in 2026. So I'll take another group back there. And Nepal is definitely a very special place for me. I feel like I've been there in past life before. So I've been there 5 times and to base camp 3 times now, done the Everest Marathon twice. So head back and do that again with a group of people looking to that experience.
Fantastic, Joe. Fantastic. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing a little bit of your story. Seeing it was about 4 years ago that you're on, so a lot has changed. And but look, even looking at all the comments and that sort of stuff, and how, people saying how inspiring and how resilient and all that sort of stuff. It's just absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank
Over
you
to you.
for the opportunity to allow me to share.
Yeah. No, I was just reading.
Definitely inspired me. Amazing story. Talk about inspiring people. I guess it's just telling your story is going to inspire a lot more others to get up and get active. I suppose, and get out there and do what
you have a new trail up there. So you have a new trail that has been made from Palm Cove to Port Douglas. Do you know about that?
Yeah, that's right. I know that they've extended the Wangeti Way at the moment, so that's pretty good. It goes from here to Alice, but I think they're talking about a whole. They're going to extend that all the way to Port Douglas, apparently.
Yeah, I know that. I know someone who's working on the project. Yeah. It looks amazing. Long time in the making, but if people can enjoy that part of that amazing coastline, that's very, very special up there.
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. I like doing it in my combi though. That's about. I like to cruise along.
You'll have to check it out when it opens up.
Look, we'll have to check it out. Yeah. Look, thank you very much for coming on and filling us in on what's happened, especially this last 12 months. It's been amazing.
Thank you. It's been big, and wish you health and lots of love. Thank you so much.
Is JB there? Hey, JB?
I think he might have disappeared. Maybe his connection.
No, I think he's just frozen. Yeah, he must be frozen. It looks like he's frozen. All that talk about snow and peaks and, rain and wind.
I think he dropped offline.
It's really crazy.
I think he dropped offline so he could sign them both up for the New Zealand event in 2026.
Oh, he must have went and did that.
Southern Lakes Ultra.
He's just on. Yeah, I reckon he's doing that. But he'll be jumping back on in a minute, I reckon. But it looks like he's just frozen there. Yeah. So you're still down the Gold Coast as well?
Still on the Gold Coast. Yeah. Actually relocating. This change of year has been quite significant for a lot of people. A lot of change, ending past stories and starting new adventures. But yeah, I am relocating my kind of house, going to transition between the Gold Coast and up north. And yeah, still running my business, which is called Eternal Peak, and be facilitating some local hikes on the Gold Coast and around the hinterland, and then setting up some retreats for people to do a bit more wellness, health, healing, and walking through nature. And then obviously some of the bigger events for people who are interested in stepping up to do something a little bit more challenging and adventurous, through taking people to Southern Lakes Ultra in New Zealand and to the Everest Marathon, and just trying to work out what my running goals will be for next year as well.
Yeah. So where can our listeners find more information? Have you got a website that you can put into?
Yeah, I have a website. It's eternalpeak.com. On Instagram and Facebook, Probably best just to follow me, Joe Rodway, on Instagram and Facebook. It's kind of where I do more of me and then cross promote the business, because essentially it's a lot of what I'm doing and how I'm living and breathing what I'm passionate about. So yeah, if anyone wants to follow or wants to know of any cool trails to do, any events or beginner events, if they want to get out and do things. I mean, the trail running community is amazing because you don't have to run. It's not about running. It's about participating and experiencing it. And there's a lot of events that allow someone who wants to do a 20K or a 50K and walk it and still have that finish line experience and feel like they've achieved it, just like the person who comes first achieves it and gets the same finish line experience. So anyone wanting to just connect, say hi, please reach out.
Well, thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you, guys.
And once again, thanks from the bottom of our hearts at Mibbenbar for all the beautiful funds that you raise for us to help our communities as well. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Just, jump off, but we'd love to have you back again, Joe, in the next bit after your next, maybe after the next marathon you went. So
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely.
All
right. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks, CJ.
Thank you.